Another Facebook Live with National Review. I'm Erica Anderson, and today I'm speaking with Congresswoman Cathy McMorris Rodgers, the chair of the House Republican Conference. Thank you so much for joining me today, Congresswoman.
It's great to be with you, Erica.
Yeah, so before we get started with questions, I want to just tell our viewers a few facts about you. You are the highest ranking Republican female in the House, elected to Congress in 2004, representing Washington State. And you are the only woman who's given birth 3 times while in office, which you broke your previous record of giving birth twice. So you stand alone in that. And you also founded the Congressional Down Syndrome Caucus after your son Cole was born with Down syndrome. So I want to kind of start there on that note. You're very passionate about supporting those with disabilities, not just supporting them though, empowering them to the highest degree. How has your son Cole shaped and directed that passion? Did you have that before he was born?
Yes, I'm a pro-life legislator. I believe that every life has value and should be celebrated. I was 35 and single when I was elected to Congress, and then I got married. Was so excited to become pregnant and give birth. And there's nothing more amazing in the world than becoming a mom. And yes, and Cole was born with that extra 21st chromosome. It wasn't what I expected, but he only reinforces that every life is precious and has value. And Cole has taught me a lot, having gone through it firsthand. And now I am proud to be a part of the disabilities community. It's a community of people that celebrate what every life has to offer, and it just never fails. And we celebrate the little things as well as the big things, and that is only reinforced the potential that every person has to offer. And being on Capitol Hill, I'm grateful that for those who've walked this path before me. You know, it wasn't that long ago that someone that was born with an extra 21st chromosome, Down syndrome, 40 years ago, they would have been put in an institution. They would have just been locked away. And to think in 40 years how far we've come, where Cole was given the opportunity for early intervention. He's in school, he's in 4th grade, he's mainstreamed, he's reading, he's doing math. He's basically on grade level with his reading. His math, he's one of the best in the class for his multiplication table. And even, this has just been in the last 10 years or so where just the education system is more welcoming and recognizing that, yes, these kids can learn and they can read and they can write and they have so much to offer. And so I'm excited with what he teaches me every day. I'm also aware that we need to do more to ensure that those with disabilities are given the opportunity to work, to have a job. We have a lot of government programs in place to help those with disabilities, but so often it means that they are limited to a life of poverty, that in order to qualify for these programs, it's you can't have very many assets. And what that means is that for a lot of them, they don't feel like they have the opportunity to work. So I'm really excited about the next frontier for the disabilities community, which is really the opportunity to work. When you look at employment rates for those with disabilities, it's not even 20%, and it hasn't changed for the last 40 years. So that's where I am working with my colleagues, working with others to really highlight that these people, these kids, want to have an opportunity to work. A job is so foundational in our lives. It's what gives us purpose. It gives us an opportunity for a better life. And so I'm excited about some legislation that I'm working on in that regard.
Right, which brings me to the ABLE Act, which is the legislation that you created in 2014 that was bipartisanly supported. It was passed by President Obama. What does the ABLE Act do? And you're also planning on expanding that to ABLE 2.0. So can you tell us a little bit about it and how it's truly empowering and helping those in the disability community to help their own lives?
Yes, the ABLE Act simply set up ABLE accounts, tax-free savings accounts. So someone with a disability, a child with a disability, could set up an account, or their family could set up an account where they could set money aside. It's similar to saving for college through a 529 account or for retirement through an IRA account. This is money that can be used for education, transportation, housing. The idea is that it helps this individual live more independently, self-sufficient. We want to build on the ABLE Act. And it had broad support. We worked for years to get the ABLE Act passed and signed into law. Broad bipartisan support in the House and the Senate. We had more co-sponsors on the ABLE Act than any other bill that Congress. So that was really exciting to see people come together. Now we want to build on it. ABLE 2.0 is a package of bills really focused on able to work. And part of it is raising the age limit. It's allowing someone who may have a 529 account to transfer that to an ABLE account should their child have a disability later on. Or it also allows an individual who is working to put their money into an ABLE account, their earnings, because quite often one of the big disincentives for someone with disabilities to work is that if they make, if they have more than $2,000 in assets, they could lose their benefits, and it really limits them. Even, I have friends in the Down syndrome community who they're focused on getting those with Down syndrome on TV shows and into movies, which is really, I think, important to continue to expose those with Down syndrome and give them those opportunities. But getting a contract for a role on a TV show or a movie, it's exciting, but it's short term.
And it's not going to be very many people.
That's right. It's not going to be very many, and it may disqualify them from their benefits. So the ABLE account is a way to empower them and address some of these barriers.
Well, and you were in a video a couple weeks ago. You were touring a business in the Capitol or near the Capitol that employs those with disabilities. I think you were talking about the ABLE Act. What have you heard from the disability community? What's been the reaction from them, and how have you seen people already being benefited by it?
We enjoyed visiting. My colleagues and I visited the Capitol Candy Jar, which is a candy, they make candy, and it was fun to see with disability. Yeah, so they're dipping, the the chocolate-covered pretzels and chocolate-covered Oreos and decorating them, and they were really good. And it was fun to talk to those with disabilities that have been employed there. And it just reinforces that, a job is so much more than a paycheck. Mm-hmm. It's what gives purpose and dignity. Those with disabilities that were employed were so excited to have a job. They were excited that they got to come to work every day. The employer talked about them having such a positive influence on the workforce, that these are young people that come to work every day on time. Mm-hmm. They are excited to be there. They have brought energy and just a positive, help create a positive culture for everyone. And it was really great to hear the positive impact that they're having beyond the job itself, but on their colleagues and those that they work with, as well as the employer's perspective as it being such a positive.
That's awesome. So I wanted to go back just 1 second to our conversation at the beginning. You and I were talking before the interview about I used to work at the GOP conference and had done a lot of social media initiatives with your office. But I remember when I first started working there, I heard about your son Cole just right away. Everybody knew about Cole. And I saw you speak at a pro-life conference just before the Walk for Life. And, as you said, so many women receive this diagnosis and ultimately they don't choose life. It's getting better, but it's certainly not great. What message would you want to send to someone who finds themselves in that situation and isn't sure what to do? There's obviously a lot of fear, and understandably so.
I just want to offer encouragement to them. I want them to know that this baby is going to bring them so much joy. It's not going to be the path that they had imagined. It's going to be a little different, but it's going to be really good. And it's difficult to receive that news. And as you said, Erica, it's the fear of the unknown. And there's something in us that I don't know, we imagine the worst at times. And even when Cole was born, I remember at one point they brought Brian and I into a room, and there was a group of people. It was the doctor and the social worker and others talking to us about this diagnosis, talking to us about what it would mean. But it was just a long list of everything that could go wrong. It was, higher likelihood of, some hearing issues or vision, or higher likelihood of juvenile leukemia, health issues. He had blockages in the intestine. It was just this long list of, what we might be facing. And at the time, it felt overwhelming. Now that I'm a little bit beyond it, I think, if any parent, upon the birth of their child, were told the likelihood that something's going to go wrong, your child's going to, have cancer or be, whatever. There's a long list of things that can go wrong and are not what you expect. It would be overwhelming for any parent. Mm-hmm. And I think my encouragement to parents that find themselves in that situation is that, this baby is like pretty much like any other baby. And yes, there's some challenges that come with having that extra chromosome, but you know what, there's also so much that you learn, such joy. I feel like to a certain degree I kind of had blinders on my eyes, and that my eyes have been opened, and I see anew what every person has to offer. And we all, to a certain degree, we all have limitations, right?
Right.
But let's not focus so much on the limitations. Let's focus on what the ability is, what everyone has to offer. And I think it's healthy for society to do that. So often we're our own worst critics, or we're so quick to maybe focus on what someone else's weakness may be. What I appreciate most about the disabilities community is that they focus on the positive and what the ability is and what everyone has to offer. And I think it's really healthy and positive and has such a hopeful impact on our family, as well as anyone who knows Cole has been positively impacted by him.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's so important to talk about, and us talking about it now. I think, you never know who your message is going to reach. My mom does work with the Special Olympics, so I have a special place in my heart for that as well. So thank you so much for sharing that. Now, you've written about, your personal experience obviously shape your approach to healthcare. You wrote about how your son having a pre-existing condition is part of why you wanted to get rid of Obamacare. Can you tell our viewers a little bit about how that influenced your decision to not support Obamacare?
Sure. I am on a mission so that everyone in this country will have an opportunity for a better life. And unfortunately, Obamacare, well-intentioned, it's a top-down approach. Federal government knows best approach to decision-making. And that is not going to result in a system in healthcare that is going to be individualized, healthcare decisions that will be made by the patient and the doctor. And I believe that we need to get back to that doctor-patient relationship. So I think it's very important that we protect those with pre-existing conditions. And that protection should be in the law and must be maintained. But I can tell you, even from our own experience, just because when Cole was first born, maybe I'll just share our story. When Cole was first born, I was on the federal government as a federal employee. I was on Blue Cross Blue Shield. Brian, as a retired Navy commander and pilot, he was on TRICARE. And we've gotten married, but we hadn't chose a family health care plan yet. So when Cole's born, we have to choose the family plan. And like any other American family, we see what's most affordable. And the Blue Cross Blue Shield was much more expensive than TRICARE. So we went on the TRICARE family plan. So we had health insurance, but I learned very quickly that TRICARE reimbursed so poorly that it was very difficult, if not impossible, for me to get the services that Cole needed. And Cole, at the very beginning, and he continues to need speech therapy and occupational therapy and physical therapy, and he has extra healthcare needs in his life, I was grateful that I could choose a different plan, that I could choose the Blue Cross Blue Shield plan at that time that better met my family's needs. And that's what we need in our healthcare system. We need to make sure that individuals, families, can have the options for the plans that are going to best meet their needs. And at different times in your life, it looks differently. For those that are on Medicaid, it's very important that we protect Medicaid. Medicaid is it's a very important safety net program. It meets the needs of some of our most vulnerable, and we need to make sure that we maintain it. As Medicaid was expanded under under Obamacare, it was really expanded. 80% plus were able-bodied adults, and unfortunately, what that meant is that able-bodied adults were crowding out some of the most vulnerable. That some of the most vulnerable, those with disabilities, were put on waiting lists to get on Medicaid. And I believe it's very important that we have Medicaid, but that for able-bodied adults, for they should, I want them to have options in the marketplace that they can go get health insurance without being on Medicaid. Medicaid should be for the most vulnerable, for those with disabilities, the blind, some of the low-income seniors, that it was intended to serve. But Medicaid is not what we want, and then we need to focus Medicaid in that way. And so I'm excited about Medicaid.
You've been having roundtables and unity dinners. Can you tell us a little bit about why you've chosen that path and how you're using those to bring civil conversation back on trend?
Well, I think it's so important. I think that it's important that we have the debate. It's a tremendous honor for me to serve as representative in the United States House of Representatives. It's an honor to represent the nearly 700,000 people that I do in Eastern Washington. The House of Representatives is often referred to as the People's House. It's where we have the battle of ideas, but we need to have that debate over ideas in a civil way. We need to respect one another. I think it is just so basic and fundamental. And I'm very concerned that if we continue down this path where it's very divisive, that we will see more violence, that we will see more destruction. And that's where I feel like it's very important that I, as a leader, as a representative of the people of Eastern Washington, do my part to bring people together to be able to have that constructive conversation. We were just talking about healthcare and Medicaid. I have met with individuals in Eastern Washington, families that are on Medicaid, that believe that the bill that I supported in the House is actually going to take their Medicaid away, totally take it away, and they are scared to death. They don't know what they're going to do without Medicaid, and it's simply not true. And in fact, not only am I committed to protecting Medicaid, but when you look at the projections, the bill that I supported in the House, the American Health Care Act, would actually increase funding for Medicaid over the next 10 years. But it would be focused on allowing states to set up those programs in a way that's going to best meet their needs. So that's just one example, but it is so divisive right now.
I was going to say it's so difficult because people are getting this message from in the media and from, frankly, the Democrats that you're hearing Elizabeth Warren say, this is blood money, people are going to die. And there are a lot of misconceptions and there's so much confusion out there. And it doesn't mean that the GOP bill is perfect, but that's why I think it's so important to hear from you to explain some of this in a civil way and that people should take the time to research rather than just listen to what they hear on the news.
There's a lot of lies, a lot of misrepresentation of the healthcare bill in particular that I just it makes me so sad and my heart breaks for people that are being told something that is not true for political purposes. We need to be able to have a debate over the future of healthcare in this country. I want I want a better healthcare system. I want everyone in this country to have access to quality and affordable healthcare. I want America to lead the world in health innovation. Having a son with disabilities only makes me more excited about the breakthroughs and the research and what's possible. And I want America to lead that. And unfortunately, because of the hostile environment so often, we can't even have that discussion, that conversation about the battle of ideas and what might best meet the needs of every person in this country. So what I've done in Eastern Washington is really work to bring some people together to have constructive conversations. And it started with a really negative experience in Eastern Washington. We had some racist graffiti at the Martin Luther King Jr. Center soon after the election. And I had reached out to the director of the center as well as the president of the NAACP, Phil Tyler. And Phil, I asked him, so what can I do? And he said, we need to be able to have he called them courageous conversations. And that is what we've embarked on doing, bringing diverse people together that have different backgrounds, different experiences, but bringing us together to gain understanding and to listen to one another and to be able to have those courageous conversations. I also have been bringing people together for unity dinners. And this was an idea that Bobby Inslow from Indaba Coffee, I was in this coffee shop and he was just reflecting on the experience of being in a coffee shop and how you meet people. And it's a great way to not only get to know each other, but then find out what each other's needs are. And he said, there's something about, bringing together people over a meal too. And he said, Cathy, I think it would go a long way just for you to bring people together over dinner or something. So anyway, I've started doing these unity dinners, and people have responded so positively to having an opportunity to come together for dinner. We do 8, 10 or so, and people that have never met each other, but putting down the devices, putting down our phones, really focusing on one another and hearing each other's stories, hearing each other's experiences, but then also talking about what kind of a community we want to have and what each one of us can be doing ourselves. Phil Tyler, who's part of the Peaceful Community Roundtable that we're doing, he says, let's focus on our house, not the White House. Mm-hmm. And just that sense that each one of us need to be doing our part. Each one of us in our families, in our communities, we need to be doing our part and being a force that is going to be willing to listen to one another, learn from one another, and then take action. But we can't just put labels on each other and then dismiss what someone may have to say. And I think that was highlighted even again most recently with the unfortunate shooting that took place. I mean, that has just sent shockwaves here at the Capitol. To think that the guys that were out at baseball practice, and then there's a shooting that takes place, and it was largely, politically motivated, which is really, I think, it really is concerning, and we need to make sure that we're saying this is really frightening if we continue down this path and allow people, no matter who they are, just to put labels on you and then to somehow dehumanize you through that. So I think each one of us has a responsibility to be a part of a constructive conversation, have those courageous conversations, have the battle of ideas. That's part of representative government. That is what is so exciting about being an American, is that we welcome that battle of ideas. We believe in representative government, but we also believe and respect the rule of law. And I think that's fundamental to who we are as Americans, and we need to we need to reflect on that. We also celebrate that we're the greatest experiment in self-governance that the world has ever seen, and it's exciting to be a part of it. I'm reminded that we need to go back to just some fundamentals in respecting representative government, respecting the rule of law, respecting the debate that needs to take place when ideas are being formed and legislation is being debated and voted on But we need to do it in a civil, respectful way.
Well, I love what you're doing with the dinners. I think that not only should more members of Congress be pushing that, but just people in your own communities should take that back home and just think about that, because you're right, the social media and just the media in general, all of those messages get lost and you just lose the personal aspect of the issues. And it's just so important to actually meet and speak with people that you disagree with and see where they're coming from. Well, I love your attitude, Congresswoman. I love your energy and just your optimism about this, about healthcare and about so many other things. And I just want to thank you so much for sharing your story with us today and for taking time out of your day to talk to me for a few minutes.
It was great to be with you, Erica.
Thanks a lot, guys. And we'll see you next time on National Review Facebook.